Thank you, Katie Pavlich. We're so lucky to have you as part of the conservative movement. My name is Victoria Mucha, and I'm a rising senior at the University of California, Berkeley, and an intern at the Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute. It is my honor to introduce to you today a man who has inspired many of us in here, including myself, to stand up for conservative values despite any opposition. Allen West was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, in the same neighborhood as where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once preached. He is the third of 4 generations of military servicemen in his family. During his 22-year career in the United States Army, Lieutenant Colonel West served in several combat zones. In Operation Desert Storm, in Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he was a battalion commander of the Army's 4th Infantry Division, and later in Afghanistan. He received many honors, including a Bronze Star, 3 Meritorious Service Medals, 3 Army Commendation Medals, and a Valorous Unit Award. In 1993, he was named the U.S. Army ROTC Instructor of the Year. After his retirement from the Army in 2004, Allen taught in high school before returning to Afghanistan as a civilian military advisor to the Afghan Army, an assignment that he finished in November 2007. In November 2010, Allen was honored to continue his oath of service to his country when he was elected to the United States Congress, representing Florida's 22nd District. As a member of the 112th Congress, he sat on the Small Business and Armed Services Committees and was instrumental in the passage of the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act. In January of 2013, Allen joined PJ Media as Director of Next Generation Programming, where he leads Next Generation TV, examining the issues of our day through the lens of the next generation, and encouraging all Americans to stand up for our nation's collective future. Allen is an avid distance runner, a master scuba diver, and even a motorcyclist. His wife, Angela, holds an MBA and PhD and is a financial planner. His older daughter, Aubrey, attends college in South Florida, and his younger daughter, Austin, is in high school. We are so privileged to have him speak to us today. Please join me in welcoming Lieutenant Colonel Allen West.
Well, if you want to get that resume, you can buy it on eBay. That's what I did. Look, it really is an honor to be here with the Clare, Boothe, Luce Policy Institute for Conservative Women Leaders. It is such an honor, Michelle, that you would have me come here. And it's kind of weird. I'm the only guy that shows up today. But let me tell you why it's important for someone like me to be here is because, I am a son of a woman. I am also the husband, and I have a father of 2 daughters. And so when you talk about conservative women leaders for the next generation, I'm living it each and every day. As a matter of fact, there's a very interesting thing that happened just yesterday when my oldest daughter, Aubrey, who's a pre-med biology student at Nova Southeastern University, she's working with the Rand Eye Institute over the summer to earn some money for next year. She called me frantic, and I didn't know what it was. The tire of her car blew out or whatever. She looked at her pay stub, and she said, "Dad, why is all of this money being taken out of my paycheck? Because I will not be able to earn the money that I thought I would be able to earn, as I go into my junior year of college." I said, "Well, because you're paying your fair share." She said, "I don't care about fair share." She said, "Everyone else needs to get out there and work hard and do exactly what you taught me to do." And see, that's the lesson that we need to impart to our sons, but also to our daughters. That's the lesson of an institute like Clare, Boothe, Luce, because when I look at what is happening in the Republican Party, and we talked about this past Democrat National Convention, the incredible hypocrisy of Sandra Fluke standing up there on that stage talking about a war on women. And then she was followed by former President Bill Clinton. And there was a lot of people that didn't pay attention to that. And we need to have the next generation of young conservative women. We need to have the next generation of conservative leaders, period. That when people start talking about war on women, they can push back on that. One of the incredible stories that I had a chance to do an interview with is a young lady by the name of Julie Aftab. And if you like, please go on nextgeneration.tv and see this interview. Julie Aftab is now 27 years of age. She was born over in Pakistan. She lives in Houston, Texas now. But at the age of 16, living in Pakistan as a Christian, she was asked to convert to Islam, and she refused to do so. So while she was sitting there in her office, the man that asked her to convert to Islam left, went and got battery acid, came back and threw it on Julie. Another man held her down while they tried to pour the battery acid down her throat because she had, quote-unquote, condemned Islam. Even after that happened, and they tried to take her to 3 different hospitals, they refused to treat Julie because she had rejected Islam. As a matter of fact, one doctor even injected poison into her vein in her left arm. She was also shot while being transported from one hospital to another. But Julie Aftab is an example of what principled women can do in changing our world. Because Julie Aftab came to the United States of America not speaking one single word of English. She has endured 31 different surgeries, 90 some odd different procedures. She now is in college at the University of Houston in Clear Lake. She is now a United States citizen. And she is so proud of this great nation. That is an example of what young women can do for this great country. If you did not get a chance to see young Malala Yousafzai, the young girl from Pakistan that was shot in the head by the Taliban, all for one simple reason. She wanted education for young girls. And I can tell you, having served in Iraq and especially in Afghanistan, the thing that made me so proud to be over there in Afghanistan was to see those little girls going to school. But also to understand the danger of those little girls going to school, being gunned down by the Taliban, having the acid thrown on them, because they don't want them to have that opportunity. They don't want them to have a future. They don't want them to be able to have the liberties and freedoms that you young ladies and young men enjoy here in the United States of America. And see, what we need is the next generation to start talking about those stories, to start affecting change in all of these countries, and to make sure that we don't relegate women in the United States of America to simply speaking to them from their waist down. Because my daughter is up here, and that's where I engage with her. And if we do not have the capability to be on our college campuses, if we do not have the capability to be up here on Capitol Hill and go out to some of these nice little fun places where you interns and all the staffers hang out, and confront the other side when they come up with their failed ideology. You know, last summer, 45% of college graduates, no job or underemployed. That's not America. When we look at the fact that we are not promoting your opportunities for advancement, when we look at the fact that we're saddling you with so much of an economic burden, we need your voices. But more importantly, thanks to this type of policy institute, we need the voices of the young girls for the next generation. You know, it's amazing to me because what you always hear, and what even Reince Priebus came out with the Growth and Opportunity Report, he said the Republican Party can no longer be seen as the party of old white men. But guess what the other side is very good and crafty at doing? They will attack those that kind of make sure that that's not the image out there. They will go after black conservatives. They will go after women conservatives. They will go after Hispanic conservatives because they don't want those voices out there. As Katie talked about, if the other side is attacking you, you should take that as a badge of honor because that means that you're doing something that is right. That means that you're standing up to them. That means that you're challenging them in each and every way. Now, the most important thing is when you're on those college campuses, as I told Victoria, you know, it's kind of like being a paratrooper. You jump in behind enemy lines. But when you jump in behind those enemy lines, you have to be well armed and equipped. And what does that mean? You have to read. You have to understand what conservatism is. You You have to understand what those principles and values are. You have to be able to articulate why is limited government and fiscal responsibility so important. Well, that's what was established in the Declaration of Independence, because the Declaration of Independence was really about the grievances that we had against an onerous and intrusive government. It was the government of King George. You have to talk about individual sovereignty, because that's what Thomas Jefferson established 237 years ago, the preeminence of individual sovereignty, your life, your liberty, your pursuit of happiness. But sometimes people believe that the government can be a guarantor of happiness. That's not where we're supposed to be. You have to be able to talk to people, and one of my big concerns is that I don't want to see us take this all of a sudden isolationist perspective, because there is an enemy out there. There is an enemy out there that will rob you of your freedoms and liberties. If you don't believe me, look at what happened in Boston. But think about the young people in Egypt. Think about the young people in Iran. Think about the young people in Syria. Think about the young people in Turkey that are standing up and saying, we don't want this thing to control our lives. We don't want this thing to tell us who we can be with, who we can love, what we must wear, what we must eat. But yet here in the United States of America, most of our college campuses, we see it openly being accepted. We see professors that are openly talking about accepting. And if you don't accept it, then people will call you intolerant. People call you Islamophobe or whatever type of, variant of a phobia. But you all have to start taking those examples that you see all over the world and start standing up for that next generation of liberties and freedoms. I'm very concerned for the type of America that will be left to my two daughters that are 20 and 16. Because for me, having two parents that grew up in South Georgia, my father was born in 1920, my mother was born in 1931. You can only imagine what it was like being black in South Georgia in those years. When my father went and served in World War II in the United States Army, it was a segregated army. When my older brother went and fought in Vietnam in the 1960s, it was still a very racially segregated military, even though they were integrated. But yet, by the time the third generation came around, I commanded a battalion. And now the fourth generation is about to get promoted to major, and he's on his way to commanding a battalion. That's the legacy that we pass on. The service and sacrifice that my parents gave to make sure that I'm standing here before you all today. And what we must make sure is that we, like in a relay race, we pass that baton on to you all. So one day down in South Florida, I'm going to get too old to go scuba diving. I'll get too old to be on my motorcycle. I'll probably start wearing Bermuda shorts with the black socks and, black dress shoes and everything like that. And I'll be driving too slow, and you guys will be honking your horn at me. But the thing is this. As you honk your horn at me, I want to look over and see the success that I fought to make sure that each and every one of you have. And what you have to also do is make sure that that subsequent generation of each and every one of you is able to proudly say, I did my part in upholding the promise of America. I did my part in making sure the legacy of the men and women who stood from Lexington and Concord to today will continue on for another 237 years. That's why we need you, and it's so important. And shame on this party for not really having that type of connection with you. But you're vital, you're important, your voice needs to be heard. Do not ever relegate yourself to sitting on the back seat. Always come up to the front seat. Because these issues that we're talking about is about your future. So with that being said, what are your questions?
Thank you for speaking to us today. I just have a question about a recent Fox News article that came out talking about how the FBI was removing certain documents that were controversial and seemed a little bit radical because they offended Muslims.
Yeah.
And it also said that the Muslim American community is an asset to us fighting terrorism. And I just wanted to know what your views on that and how important is it for us to be, should we be politically correct because we don't want to alienate the community, and how important are they in that fight?
No, you can't be politically correct. You have to tell the truth. First of all, I will tell you all, when you leave here, go online and look up a document called the Explanatory Memorandum that was uncovered back in 1991 in an FBI raid right across the Potomac here in Northern Virginia. The explanatory memorandum is the Muslim Brotherhood's blueprint for what they want to do in America and North America overall. And furthermore, go back and you can research a letter that was written on the 27th of October of 2011 by 57 Islamic organizations, several of them with ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, to then counterterrorism chief John Brennan. And it talked about they wanted any type of language that they deemed offensive to Islam to be purged. Basically, it was just about telling the truth from FBI training documents and also Department of Defense documents. And you had an Army Lieutenant Colonel that was an instructor at the Joint Forces College down in Norfolk, Virginia, that was taken off the platform because of that complaint. So, and it was June the 13th when a radical Islamic cleric was invited into the White House, Sheikh bin Bayat, to meet with our senior level leaders of the National Security Council. And guess what happened that same day on June the 13th? That was the day when we said we would provide weapons and arms to the Syrian rebels who are mostly tied to Al-Qaeda. 10 days after that, they beheaded a French Catholic priest, Father Durand. So this is not about being politically correct. This is about, if you study, you read the Quran, you read the Hadiths of Muhammad, you read the Surah, you will understand from which you are speaking. We're talking about a totalitarian, theocratic political ideology. And if you recognize those phases in Islam, then you are able to articulate that. And it's very simple. When they call you names, it's all about getting you to cower down. What did I just talk about? The young people in Egypt, 70% of Egypt is below 30 years of age. They came out in the streets and said, we are not going to trade one tyrant for another tyrant. We do not want to have this Islamic Sharia law in Egypt. We want to be free. We want to be able to live our lives. And guess what? Mohammed Morsi is gone. But it's the exact same Mohammed Morsi that, for whatever reason, our government was supporting and praising. It was our government that told Hosni Mubarak to get lost, but we never said Mohammed Morsi. So what is the example that we're showing? The exact same thing with the Green Movement in Iran. When those young people were out there, remember I think she was 18 and 19 years old, the young lady that was shot by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and it was on social media showing her bleeding out and dying. We're supposed to be the beacons of liberty, freedom, and democracy. People are coming to America to get away from that type of persecution, but yet we're allowing it to come here and find roots here in the United States of America. How did the Department of Defense and the administration turn what happened in Fort Hood, Texas, which was my last duty station? They said it was workplace violence. That was a terrorist attack. I often tell people, when tolerance becomes a one-way street, it leads to cultural suicide. And that's the road that we're on. Yes, sir?
Sir, my name is Matthew. I'm an intern at Congressman Chris Gibson's office.
I know him very well.
He was a
Very
great
well.
officer. So next May, I'll graduate West Point and get my commission.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Go artillery.
Yeah, I just got back from Boothe.
See?
Small world. So my question is regarding our oath to the Constitution.
Yes.
And I'm not speaking necessarily of any particular administration or legislative branch, but so we're sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution.
Absolutely.
What do we do when the government stops upholding the Constitution? What is that limit? When do we decide that's the limit?
This is the interesting paradox here in the United States of America, because we trust our civilian leadership to do their job and to do their part as far as being, the right and proper supervisors of the United States military. You're never going to have a United States military that comes across the Potomac, much the same as the Roman army who never, came into Rome. So you're never going to have that happen. But what we do have to have, and that's one of the things that I want to see, is more former officers and senior non-commissioned officers, such as Chris Gibson, such as myself, such as others, that are up here on Capitol Hill. They can tell the stories and make sure we have the right type of legislative agenda that promotes the number one responsibility of the United States government, which is to provide for the common defense and the preamble of the Constitution. After World War II in Korea, you had about 75 to 80% of the members of Congress, House and Senate, that had served in the military, that have been, willing to put their lives on the line for that oath to the Constitution. Well, guess where we are today up here on Capitol Hill?
It's a very small percentage.
It's like less than 12% that have served in the United States military. Now, if you want to talk about people that have been on the recent modern battlefields of Iraq and Afghanistan, now you're talking less than 5%. And that affects the type of policies that you see happening with our military. And I'll be very honest, okay? I don't see why we have an administration that's talking about women being in special operations units like the Rangers and the SEALs. If something's not broke, then why do you need to go out there and try to fix it? But yet you have people that see the military as it's just another job. And there are positions to have in the military. And if, certain people can't have those positions, then they're not going to be able to get promoted. So it's that warped sense of social egalitarianism that people are trying to impart upon the military. You see the folks that are over here in the old guard, or, the people that, the ceremonial soldiers. Guess what? You must be 6 feet tall to be in a ceremonial unit up here in Washington, D.C. Now, I was a pretty sharp soldier, but I'm 5'9". It wasn't going to happen. Okay? Now, is that discriminatory? Oh, yeah, it is. Okay. But the same thing is that if you can't run 2 miles in a certain amount of time, you don't get to play. If you can't do, a certain amount of push-ups or pull-ups in a certain amount of time, you don't get to play. If you have flat feet, you don't get to play. Because what people fail to realize is that the profit margin in the United States military is not in dollars and cents, it's in people's lives. And if you don't have people up here on Capitol Hill that can articulate that understand what the Constitution is, that responsibility, that looks at Article 1, Section 8, and lays out all those responsibilities for us up here, then you have the problems that you see in the military. So you serve, and I'm looking about 20 years, I'm waiting for you to run for Congress.
I'll be room for that, sir. Yes.
If you get shot at, you can come up here, okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Cool.
I'm curious, Stephen, I'm a Clare Boothe intern, and you were speaking about just the different things that women have to go through in third world countries. And I'm currently doing my honors thesis on the Syrian conflict and taking Islam and global politics, mainly just to understand more. And so I'm starting to get some education about what's going on. It's coming up, and it's really disheartening to see what's happening and just the doctrine and what they have to go through. So my question is, how, at a college campus, how do you articulate that to people so they understand that what we're trying to fight against in other countries is what we're fighting against here? How do you articulate that so people understand?
Well, I think, it comes back to the discussion of liberty. And it comes back to the discussion of freedom. When you look at countries that are repressing a large percentage of that country, when you understand that there is see so much going through my head, I'm getting so old I just forgot. The female circumcision that is going on in these countries, the repression, the fact that you still have young girls being married off at 11 and 13 years of age because of the tradition of Muhammad. His favorite wife was Aisha, who he married at 6 and consummated at 9. And they believe that that's how they're supposed to continue to live. We've got to educate people on these things because I'm not looking at going out and trying to make someone more democratic. But I would love to coexist with all people. But if there are people that are living under a 7th or 8th century ideology, it's very hard to coexist with them. Now, those people that are living with the 7th and 8th century ideology, they understand 21st century technology, and they understand the resources and the economy of the 21st century, so they're very able to propagate their thought process all across the United States of America. Look at what is happening in Europe. Look at what is happening in England. All you need to do is, anyone here from Michigan? Google up Dearborn, Michigan, or if you've ever been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, as I said, there is a respect for our culture, and there are people that are trying to get away from this. Honor killings. Ladies, Google up honor killings. There are young Muslim girls that are being killed in the United States of America because they're becoming too Western. It happened to 2 sisters out in Dallas, Texas. It happened to a young lady out in Arizona. It happened to a young girl in Jonesboro, Georgia. It happened to a woman up, I believe, in New Jersey that was beheaded by her husband because she wanted a divorce. These are the type of things that if you don't deal with over there, they do come here. And it cannot be under this guise of multiculturalism and tolerance. Or else, like I said, you lose your own culture. Thank you.
Victoria, and on campus I'm the president of Christians United for Israel, chapter at UC Berkeley. And so I get called a racist all the time. Why do you think that the other side and the left in general are so successful in winning the apathetic students? Is it because we don't speak out enough, or we don't speak the truth, or they're lying, or a combination of many things.
It's the intimidation factor. And it's just not in our college campuses, but when you look at the IRS scandal, and that's not a phony scandal, it's about a culture of intimidation. So if I call you racist, that's going to make you retreat. That's going to make you crawl back within your skin, and you're not going to stand up tall. You have to fight through that. You know, I think it's very funny when, white people call me a racist. I guess we've really advanced when a black guy can be racist. But that's the level to which they can't win the argument. And that's what they have to do to each and every one. And what you must do is continue to press the attack. And understand that eventually, look, my wife was a liberal. My wife was working up in New York. And I mean, finally, I just, slowly but surely, like the, little Chinese water torture where you drip, 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 drip. She finally, said, I can't deal with this anymore. Because the truth is the truth, and it's immutable. And so that's what you have to do. And I don't know if a lot of you all remember the miniseries Band of Brothers. Okay, there was a Cherokee word that was the motto of that unit. That Cherokee word was Kirahi. And Kirahi means stands alone. And why was that so important? Because the 101st Airborne Division was surrounded by the Germans in December of 1944 at a place called Bastogne. And they were asked to surrender by the Germans. Dead of winter, they weren't properly equipped. And you know what the commanding general for the 101st said back? He said, nuts. That's Kirahi. That's being able to stand alone, no matter what the conditions, no matter what the situation, no matter how you feel outnumbered. You don't relent. You don't give up. And that's one of the things we have to, I know a lot of people are upset about what happened in 2012, and guess what? I see that as an opportunity. Because there are a lot of people that are looking around. Look at Jimmy Hoffa sending a letter to former Speaker Pelosi and Reid saying, you know what? Us union guys, we voted for you on this Affordable Care Act. It's broken. You better fix it because you're losing our support. The truth eventually will come out. We just have to keep pounding, keep pounding, keep pounding. There will be a conservative revolution. And people like you, Victoria, you're going to be right there leading the charge. Got it. See, if I was tall like him, I could have been in the old guard.
Hi, Lieutenant Colonel West. My name is Brian Stout, and I'm a postgraduate student at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, Center for International Relations.
I'm about to fly to the Netherlands next week, to Amsterdam.
Okay. The world is in an unprecedented era in which states' greatest security threats come not from other states, but from non-state actors. How do the actions of our war criminal president, including drone strikes in Yemen, murdering 30 innocent men, women, and children at an Afghan wedding, further our national interests? These actions encourage anti-American radical Islam terrorists and will further prompt our government to encroach upon civil liberties.
Well, I don't want to see drones flying around the United States of America, but let me talk to you, having been a guy that's been over there on that battlefield and been shot at a few times. Let me tell you the tactic of the enemy. The enemy is cowardly. They will go and hide behind women and children. They will go hide in, cemeteries or anything like that, because what they want is to get that piece of propaganda. You see that in the Gaza Strip or what have you. Now, they're not good people. And I believe that we do the best that we possibly can to try to segregate out those targets. But the bottom line is this: if we can use all of our resources to be able to attack their leadership, to be able to attack the enemy, the onus is upon them. It's not upon us. I wish that they played, by nice guy rules too, and they would not have inspired two young men to take, pressure cooker bombs to the Boston Marathon and attack men and women that were out there just doing one simple thing, and kill a kid that was just out there doing one simple thing, enjoying their life. So, the drone policy is part of, this incredible war that some people call a war on terror. I think that's a misnomer. Terror is a tactic, how you fight it. You have to fight against the ideology. I think that when you look at this non-state, non-uniform belligerent that is out there on the battlefield, you have to go at them and fight them wherever they are. That's just the bottom line that it is. Now, and when you say that all we're doing is increasing their hatred, do you know who Leon Klinghoffer is?
I don't.
Leon Klinghoffer was a Jewish American man. He was in a wheelchair. on the Achille Lauro, a cruise ship in the Mediterranean. And I can close my eyes and remember this clear as day. Hezbollah terrorists took over the Achille Lauro, and on camera, they pushed Leon Klinghoffer off the Achille Lauro into the Mediterranean Sea. They hate us because we exist. They hate Western civilization because we stand for everything that they despise. So fighting back against them, you are believing in their propaganda. You know, you can close Gitmo, you can send them back to them, and let me tell you, we fought against guys in southern Afghanistan that have been released from Gitmo. The rate of recidivism is about 31 to 32%. You look at what just happened with the prison breakout there in Baghdad, Abu Ghraib, where Al-Qaeda, who's supposed to be gone, now you got 500 more radical Islamic terrorists that are running across the country. You got to take the fight to them. And Sun Tzu, I don't know if you ever read The Art of War. Sun Tzu said, to know your enemy, to know yourself, and to know the environment. In all battles, you will always be victorious and successful. If we don't come to face and to grips with this enemy that we're facing, that has been fighting against Western civilization, has been fighting against liberty and freedom since 628 AD, you're never going to get there. As a matter of fact, study the Battle of Tours and see what Charles Martel had to do to save France. And I think it was about 727 AD.
Okay. Well, I don't think we should close Guantanamo. I think it's prudent statecraft to be able to torture enemy combatants and or terrorists. But, I mean, really, Islamic anti-American sentiment has not existed until the 20th century.
That's a lie. That is a bone-stinking lie. Because the reason why Thomas Jefferson had a Koran was because the day of Algiers, in the time of the Barbary pirates, were seizing American prisoners. And when Thomas Jefferson confronted him in France, he asked him why. He basically said, because you're infidels, and we are commanded to do so. Know your history.
Well played. Good point. I'm just thinking, okay, it was never a problem like it is today. Islamic terrorism in the United States until after the...
Do you know who Sayyid Qutb is? Sayyid Qutb, who came, and he was one of the founding members of the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, he studied at a university in Colorado. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed studied at the University of North Carolina. They have always had a disdain and a hatred of us. It's just that now, because of our recalcitrance, and as I said, because of the advance of 21st century technology, the fact that we're sending so much of our taxpayer dollars over there to fund them, they're able to take this to a new level. It's always been there.
One last question. So do you believe that the very existence of Islam is a threat to the United States' very existence?
Post 628, yes. Unless Islam reforms itself, it will always be a danger and a threat to Western civilization and to the free world.
Next question?
Yep. One more.
My name is Lauren Spence, and I'm a rising senior in high school. And as a father of a high school student, do you have any advice for how to be an activist in high school?
Yeah, I mean, once again, I talk to my daughter because, people know who her dad is, and they challenge her sometimes, and, just tell the truth. We have to have those conversations at home. 2 weekends ago, I sat down with my two girls, Aubrey and Austin, and we pulled up on Netflix, and we watched Atlas Shrugged, Part 1 and Part 2, because that was about their life, that was about their future. And they paid attention, they got it, they understood it. And so parents have a responsibility of not just saying, you're too young, you're not going to get it. In 1979, that was when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. Now, who would ever told me that, 2005, that I would be landing in Kabul, Afghanistan? That was a surprise. I remember the Saudi oil embargo crisis when we were having to, do odd and even days because the Saudis, said we're not going to send you any oil. And we created an entity called the Department of Energy to make the United States of America independent. And guess what? Are we? So we need to have these conversations with our sons and daughters at home to talk to them about the trends. George Santayana said in 1920, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat. I do not want to see any of you standing up here still talking about what's going on with an oil crisis what's going on in Afghanistan or whatever, sooner or later we have to make the hard decisions. We have to make some of these things, resolve these problems and these issues. Or else we're selling your